Welcome to Mr. LK. This is where we explore the hidden psychology of money, life, discipline, success, and freedom. Today, we are going to talk about a silent enemy that destroys many people from the inside. Overthinking. Human beings do not die because they lack thoughts. They slowly decay because they do not know how to stop thinking. Physical exhaustion has a limit, but mental exhaustion does not. It creates itself. It expands itself. And eventually, it begins to consume the person who carries it. A person who works with their body can sleep when they are exhausted. But the modern person who works with their mind may be completely exhausted and still unable to turn off the brain. And that is where real burnout begins. Thinking too much is not wisdom, it is noise. Right thinking creates decisions. Repeated thinking creates anxiety. Endless thinking destroys judgment. The brain was not designed to run 24 hours a day. But modern life forces it to do exactly that. News, social media, comparison, expectations. A continuous stream of stimulation with no stopping point. The result is not greater intelligence. The result is paralysis. A person sees too many choices, thinks too many thoughts, and slowly loses the ability to act. This is the paradox of our time. Human beings have never had access to more knowledge than they do today. But at the same time, it has never been harder to focus. It has never been harder to make decisions. And it has never been easier to become mentally exhausted, not because we lack understanding, but because too many meaningless things have entered our system of awareness. The brain is not becoming weaker. It is being overloaded by mental noise, and mental noise is what quietly kills wisdom, not the great thoughts. Not the important questions, but the small, useless thoughts that repeat themselves every day, assumptions that are not real. Imaginary conversations that never happened, worries about things that may never come, memories that are already gone, but continue to replay inside the mind. All of these become background noise, and when the noise becomes too loud, the real signal disappears. Silence is not emptiness. Silence is the condition that allows wisdom to appear. The people of the past were not necessarily wiser because they knew more. They were often clearer because they were disturbed less. A quiet mind sees things directly. A quiet mind makes decisions cleanly. A quiet mind does not create unnecessary problems. But a noisy mind overanalyzes. It delays. It creates fear. It becomes trapped inside its own thoughts. To clear mental noise is not some mystical practice. It is a survival skill. You do not need to make it complicated. You only need to understand one principle. Not every thought deserves to continue when a thought appears. Ask yourself, does this thought help me solve a real problem? If not, let it go. Does this thought only repeat an emotion? If yes, let it go. Does this thought lead to a clear action? If not, let it go. Simple, but extremely difficult. Because human beings are addicted to thinking, many people believe that if they keep thinking, they are being responsible. But very often, they are only feeding fear. They are not solving the problem. They are rehearsing their anxiety. The miracle is not in thinking more. The miracle is in thinking less, but thinking correctly. When the mind becomes truly quiet, you begin to see what needs to be done. You act without endless hesitation. You are no longer pulled in every direction by unnecessary emotion. This is not enlightenment. This is the optimal state of a human being. Clear, calm, direct. There are two ways for a person to wake up. The first way is to read, understand, and adjust themselves early. The second way is to be hit by life so hard that they are forced to change. The second way is always more expensive, and yet most people choose it, not because they want to suffer, but because they never stop long enough to realize what the real problem is. You do not lack ability. You do not lack information. You do not lack potential. What you lack is inner silence, and if you do not solve that, every effort to improve your life will eventually be damaged by something invisible. The uncontrolled stream of thoughts inside your own mind. So before you search for more answers, learn to become quiet. Before you chase another method, learn to remove the noise, because sometimes the next level of your life does not begin with doing more. It begins with thinking less and seeing clearly.